Excellent. Well, we're at the top of the hour here. Welcome, everybody. Want to say welcome and happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar of Generative AI Solutions for Government Employees. At graduate school, webinars like this are part of our commitment to supporting the federal workforce. It's been a very demanding year for many teams and individuals such as yourselves, and we hope that this free session provides helpful insights as you prepare for 2026. Before we get started, just some quick housekeeping items. So if you want content related questions or if you have content related questions, please send those directly to Brian. And if you are seeing any technical issues with Zoom, please reach out to Shige. If you're unsure how to do that, you just go to the bottom of your screen in Zoom. You click on chat. In that chat on the bottom left side, you'll see a blue down arrow that you can click on. And there you can see Brian's name or Shige's name in order to send a direct message. As a reminder, we will not be sharing slides from today's session. However, we are recording. A copy of this recording will be made available soon. Now, I'm excited to introduce today's presenter, Brian Sims. Whether you're familiar with him or not, Brian is an educator and training leader with deep experience in both project management and generative AI. He brings over 15 years of education, including 10 years focused on project management and the last 5 specializing in artificial intelligence. Brian leads curriculum development and training initiatives that help government and private sector professionals strengthen project execution, make data-informed decisions, and apply AI in particular in practical, responsible ways. If you've taken or plan to take any of GSUSA's newer AI courses, there is a good chance Brian either helped design the curriculum or is teaching the course himself. Today, Brian will help us explore how generative AI can be applied in real-world government challenges. So please join me in welcoming Brian Sims.
All right. Thank you so much, Amanda. And hi, welcome everybody. As I mentioned, I was looking at the waiting room and it looks like I have some people who have been with me in class. Hello. Oh, I'm getting messages right now. Awesome. Great to see everybody. So glad you could spend your lunch hour with us or breakfast or your midnight stroll if you're one of those users who came in at 4 a.m. or whatever. Goodness. So glad to have you with us today. It'll be a fun and impactful session, I'm sure. As Amanda mentioned, we're going to be looking today at some practical, real-world ways that generative AI can help government employees like yourself reduce your workload, improve your efficiency, and help you prepare in general for a more productive 2026. So yeah, we'll go ahead and kick off here, generative AI solutions for government employees. We only have an hour together today, but we're going to cover a lot of good information. We'll take a beat here at the beginning to make sure we all just have the same foundational understanding and we're walking into this understanding some of the same terms and those sorts of things. So we'll talk about a little bit about the landscape of AI and how generative AI fits into it. Specifically, we'll talk about what generative AI can and can't do and how that applies to government work. We'll focus on a lot of the practical today. I'll do some demonstrations where I'll show you some different AI features that I think will be really helpful and hopefully plant some ideas for opportunity to safely automate some of your more routine network work that either you have for the rest of this year or going into the following. And then at the end of the session, I'll offer a few suggestions for using AI effectively as we're looking ahead to 2026. But before we do that, I would love to hear from everybody who we have in attendance with us today. We've got a couple of poll questions. Shige, if you wouldn't mind putting up that first one, I'd love to just kind of get a sense of who's with us and what your experience level is like. So we have just 3 quick questions here, and we'll share the results here in a few seconds. See lots of things coming in. First question's asking, how familiar are you with AI, with generative AI specifically? I'm watching those numbers tally. They're beginning to slow. Great. Want to get a sense of that. All right, cool. You want to throw up those results, Shige, if that's okay? Great. Looks like we have most people using it occasionally. Oh, okay. A good number too, using it daily. More people on the no experience at all side or rarely using it. Okay, great. That's wonderful to know. That really helps me. I'll do things a little bit differently in some of my demonstrations. Awesome. Another poll question, if we can, Shige. Do you use AI, generative AI specifically, in your personal or professional work? Um, we've got a lot of people in class, some both, some neither, some one, some more than the other. So I'd love to get a sense of how you're using it. Looks like most people coming in at both or neither. Okay, numbers are starting to slow a little bit. I see. Okay, running in, more coming in. All right, yeah, let's go ahead and share those results if that's okay. Most people who are using it for both. Okay, great to know. Thank you. And then the last poll question, then I'll leave you all alone. I'd love to get a sense with this last poll question of, for those of you who are using it, obviously, if you're not, and you identified that in the last two questions, you can, click NA. But if you are using it, what system are you using? Ask Sage, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, either its public version or the government version. And there's some agency specific ones down there at the bottom as well. If you give it a bit of a scroll, Camo GPT, Elsa, Nipper GPT, those sorts of things. So love to understand where you're most familiar, looking like by a pretty solid margin. If people are using it, yeah, let's go ahead and share those results if that's okay. Most people using ChatGPT or Copilot. That is in line with a lot of what I have seen in class. A couple people with some of those other items, and I don't think I put Perplexity on here. I left my buddy Perplexity out of this list, but okay, well, great. That's wonderful. As I mentioned, we can go ahead and take those down. That's fantastic. Great to know. We are going to do some demos, so getting this sort of feedback will help me in my approach to those demos and will help dictate some of the systems I use and things. So great. Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward with our presentation. Thank you so much for that input and engagement. So as I mentioned, let's set the stage for our discussion today. I have a graphic up here from the Government Accountability Office. They issued a report earlier this year that fairly early on in that report contained this infographic, and I like it a lot. I think it does a few things. When you're trying to understand the landscape of AI, certainly there's a lot of terms out there, and this is a very simplistic way to show it. But I think it's an effective one because it kind of shows how they're all interrelated, and I like that that it funnels towards the bottom to show that we're getting more and more specific. So to walk through these types of AI, I think that's a good way to phrase it and talk about it. AI is a very broad term, and it means any system that's doing a job that normally would have required human intelligence. So that's a pretty broad term, right? And it's been around for decades. This is not new. Generative AI, the subject of our webinar today, is quite new, but AI has been around for a long time. So this, by the way, is why you can, have some of those experts out there. If you're maybe even feeling a little bit left behind, like how are people saying they've been doing this for 20 years, or decades or whatever, right? Well, this is how, because AI is a very broad term, and it's been out for a while. A subset of that, or another type, if you want to use that word, is machine learning. We go into this quite a bit more in a lot of our classes where we talk fundamentals and things, but to be very basic and simple about it, I kind of talk about this as AI with a job. It's been, very complex algorithms. Maybe even there's a little bit of neural network involvement, but it's AI that's performing a specific task. Is I think a very intentionally simple way to describe it. A level down from there is what we have kept the learning, but inherited the word deep learning. This is a subset of machine learning that goes even deeper. Not a uber creative name there, is it? But it very deep neural networks, deep use of algorithms, very intelligent and complex tasks. So you've certainly interacted with both of those, deep learning, machine learning. Machine learning, for example, that would be like the filtering on your email. When you get something that's automatically marked as junk or as a promotion or something in your Gmail or whatever. That's machine learning at work. Deep learning, for example, if you ever like you have an Alexa around your house, or if you're using your phone and saying, "Hey, Siri or whatever, what's the weather like today?" That is a very complex task. That's broken. That's a lot of things going on with that. It has to recognize its wake word. It has to understand that what language that is, turn it into text, a whole bunch of things going on. So deep learning, if machine learning is AI with a job, deep learning is an expert at the job, or AI with a more complex job is a good way to think of it. But that leads us then to generative AI, which is like a super intelligent instance of deep learning is hopefully a productive way to think about it. It's so smart and it can do so many complex tasks that you can converse with it like it's a person. And this is the type of AI that we're going to be focused on in our webinar today. But as we'll see here in a little bit, even generative AI is a pretty broad category. So, you're certainly not alone if you're thinking, wow, there's all these buzzwords out there. It's a lot. It's complex. It is. But we'll break it down today in this webinar, and there's a lot more to be explored in some of our classes. So to start, what is generative AI? As I mentioned, it's a very broad term in and of itself, even though it's a subset and a specific one. But there are lots of generative AI systems. There are some that focus on data. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to progress this. And what that definition means is it's any sort of AI system that generates new content or new data. So that's a component right there. You're going to have some new content, and that content could be text, could be images, could be audio, video, code, a design, and there's a whole library of generative AI models out there to choose from. So there's language models, diffusion models, generative adversarial networks, and things. That's a whole deep another conversation. We have whole classes on that subject as well. But another kind of defining feature is, depending on the model, of course, but they can usually respond to various inputs too, which this is a neat little zoom out moment to think about. A lot of us, especially maybe if we're new to experiences with generative AI, are used to typing in questions. But I've certainly had folks in class who, as we're working through some of this stuff, we're like, hey, see that little plus button there? Give it a click. Like, notice you can upload files, upload images, sketches, audio clips, video clips in some models and things. So it can usually respond to various inputs. And, some are better at certain things than others. So that's a good reason for experimentation. But generally speaking, they can usually take various sorts of inputs. And they're used for all types of things, right? Because it's something that can so conversational and so easy to work with. These are often used for like creativity, automating things, simulating different scenarios, and just, generally speaking, exploration across all sorts of topics. So how does it work? Well, again, we're going to be intentionally really simple here, and we do only have an hour together, but how it works is, like most modern AI, it starts with data, right? So it learns patterns from all the data that it's been fed. So it's looking at all this data, it's starting to recognize patterns, and as it does this, it begins to build internal representations of things like pixels and words and relationship structures, features within that data, right? So it's starting to build those representations, and then it begins to use probabilistic prediction to, okay, I feel like I've seen enough of this that I'm saying I feel like with a high amount of confidence, or more than I had before anyway, this is going to be the next element. This is the next word or phrase that comes next. Usually, when I've seen pixels of this type of grouping, this is what comes next. Same with frames, same with notes, those sorts of things, right? It's using that prediction. It then can generate new output by sampling from those patterns that it's learned to make something new. It's not going to take It's not doing a copy paste, right? It's just taking samples from what it's learned and it's creating something that's net new. And I want to pause there and let that sink in a second, right? Because we're going to talk about this actually a fair amount during our short hour today. It doesn't know what it's doing. It's guessing. It's sampling. It's trying, right? So that'll be quite important for our conversation today. But And then after it has given that output, it can be improved, right? Through fine tuning and the feedback certainly that the users give it. This is very helpful. It allows if you're using something that's very public to be adapted to specific domains or specific tasks through that feedback and fine tuning. And right, all that input is new data, and the process starts over again, right? So the simplest way to understand it, and the reason I paused on the discussion of how this works, is your generative AI predicts, right? As I said, it doesn't know things. And again, this is going to come up a lot in our conversation today because this is why human review is essential. I have a colleague who very correctly likens it to if you've ever had, like, if you ever talked to a small child or maybe somebody who's new to a field or something, and they use a word that, like, oh, excuse me, I didn't know you even knew that word, but yeah, that's a $5 word. Like, you use that in the right context and in the right sense and in the right scenario. So that can happen. Also, the opposite can happen is like, oh, that's cute. You're trying this on. That's not really how this works, though. You don't quite understand it. I think that's an apt illustration for generative AI, right? It doesn't know, and it's going to need some help and feedback. So federal data has been a little harder to come by lately, but certainly from my conversations with federal employees or government employees of all types in our classes, and the data have been able to get my hands on, I believe it's pretty safe to say, right, that most office-based government employees spend hours each week writing, analyzing, communicating, right? AI can help, right? It can help shift that workload from heavy documentation, lots of meetings, prep, and all the actions afterwards, and emails and information. It can shift that workload from drafting to editing. So I know a very common kind of sentiment out there, and we talk about this a lot in the classes, in our classes too, is, I'm really worried AI is going to take my job, and or jobs of people I care about and things. And well, first of all, it won't be AI that does it. It's people who make those decisions. But yeah, I tend to have a pretty optimistic view of it, because I think, like, unless your job happens to be drafting something and then pushing it out without a second thought, um, then maybe I'd be a little worried about AI. But if you're adding any level of feedback or expertise to it, right, that's irreplaceable. AI can't replace your expertise, but it can speed up the part of the work that takes the most time. Which, if you're at all like me, that is usually, I've got that blinking cursor, right? I'm staring at a blank page, and it takes me sometimes hours to get to a first draft of my checklist or document or whatever, right? So this is a helpful little graphic. We won't spend too much time on it. It's also from that same GAO report that came out earlier this year. But I think, it's quite telling. Oh, excuse me. There we go. Got it back. It shows that the little hashed lines on it show the number of generative AI cases reported at the end of 2023, and compares that to those same offices. That solid bar there is the number of generative AI cases in 2024. And, I hope that GAO does something similar as we close out 2025. But it's happening, right? Adoption is clearly on the rise. You didn't need this graphic to tell you that. So it's so great that you're here, right? Let's not get left behind. If this is your first step, it's a fantastic one. There's so much to learn, and it's not that scary. I'll show you some examples of that today. So let's move into some examples of how AI can help support your everyday work. Um, uh, Before I go into the demo portion, though, I think it's productive to mentally think of these types of things as, like we call them in classes, our AI assistant. One, because someone might be using one platform and then someone's using another tool, and it obviously varies. Even though the functionality is largely the same. There's such a variety of tools. So AI assistant is a nice blanket I can throw over, all of those words. But I also think that's a good way to think about it, right? Like I mentioned, the illustration of it being a child, and they're maybe just trying something on, trying a word on in a specific context or conversation. I think if we can think of these tools as AI assistants, that's productive because just like a junior analyst or any sort of human assistant, like, oh, thank you for that work. Let me check this, right? Want to make sure we're putting out the right information and those sorts of things. But yeah, again, just like your human assistant, it could, can you give me some ideas about a particular topic? Can you draft this for me, be it a memo, email, report, or whatever, and send it over to me? Let me take a critical eye to it. You were in the meeting. Can you send me your summary? I kind of want to take a look at it, and maybe you got the phrasing is wrong or whatever. That's not really what they meant when they said that, or so many acronyms in government. And like, no, that they said something else. That's not what they meant. It can be used for improving or reviewing work. I do this all the time. It's fantastic for creating outlines, checklists, or templates for things. You can upload data into it. We'll actually see an example of that here in a moment. And it can look for specific trends that, maybe you haven't noticed. And it's particularly good at analyzing or comparing changes. Say, like I use it a lot where, here's the previous public policy on whatever, and here's, the executive order that just came out. Look at these two documents and, tell me if there are substantial changes. And that's, can be a good flag to raise it like, oh, yeah, this is a totally different cut on how to do this. Oh, okay. Thanks for that, feedback. I'm going to read this whole thing in detail, as a possibly silly little example. So yeah, it can do lots of things, and let's take a look at some of them. Let me share out my screen here. Let me get us into. We said a lot of people were using ChatGPT. I'll go ahead and show that too, I think. I won't go through every one of those scenarios we were talking about. But I've already logged in here to ChatGPT. One that I'll talk about because I think it's going to be really common for a lot of folks is drafting support. So I have pre-typed a prompt here, so you don't have to listen to me breathe and watch me type a little bit. I'll hit submit here, and we can talk, and you'll just see the speed I expect. See, I haven't even read it to you yet, and here it's out already. But I asked it, hey, can you draft me an email informing my team about an upcoming webinar? The information is here, and I linked to today's webinar session, actually. And I said, keep it in plain language and suitable for a government workspace. And so this demos a couple of things. One, just how darn fast that was. And two, it comes up in class a lot. Sometimes I see a jaw drop when I start demoing things, and that's usually because people maybe didn't realize you could drop in um, uh, drop in a link. Like I've been copying and pasting, for forever. I didn't realize it could go out to the web or something like that. So that's a cool thing. So let's see what we have. It says, here's a draft of the email. It keeps language clear. So it gave us a subject for our email here and a date. That's kind of nice. Team, I want to share professional development opportunity. Great. I didn't call it that, but it knew what it was. Graduate School USA. It's a free webinar. Here it is. It'll cover X, Y, and Z. It's an hour session designed to help. Cool. Okay. If you're interested in attending and would like more details, oh, it even put the link in there. That's nice. I didn't ask it to do that. Please let me know if you plan to attend or have any questions, right? So this is actually really good, right? But maybe, and this is a pretty low stakes thing. So maybe this is a fine AI task, but you can see, right? We could come in here and copy what it generated for us. And, maybe I don't want, our department's huge. I don't want a bazillion emails letting me know if they plan to attend or not. Just go, right? You could come in here and edit this, to your heart's content, or maybe, I don't say thanks. We always say respectfully around here, that sort of thing. So yeah, this is a really good one. Um, what I want to also demo is, you can change the tone. Like, let's say if I had an example of the last time I told my team about this webinar, that's kind of like gold, right? I could come here and click the little plus sign and maybe upload that old email or that Word document or that poster or whatever that we put out to market for that particular event, right? And that's fantastic because you can say, hey, here's the webinar. Take a look at this example. give me something that's in the same tone with the same sections, all that good stuff. So that could be really nice. You can also have it change, maybe this is too long, too short, or maybe you want to change the tone entirely. So I'm going to have it do that, and we'll have a little fun with it too. I'm going to say this is a little too stuffy. I want this to be a little more exciting and upbeat for my team. Please make this sound more friendly. Like, say, Ted Lasso wrote this email. And, every time you use AI, by the way, it's different. So this could be interesting. Let's see what it does. Subject, let's talk AI. Join us for a free webinar this Friday. Hi, team. Hope your week's off to a great start. I want to share a fun and genuinely useful opportunity. And it's all about practical ways. This session will explore generative AI while keeping ethics responsibility front and center. Think less buzzwords, more real world help. No homework required. And if you're curious, which is something they talk a lot about, staying curious in Ted Lasso. So there I can see how it plugged that in a little bit. Here's the details. Hope to see a few familiar names. As Ted Lasso would say, be curious, not judgmental. Thanks. Yeah, sure. We can say dial up give me even more Ted. Turn that 10 up Ted up to 11 if we wanted, to have some more fun with it, or add more Ted Lasso references could be, say, my next prompt. But maybe I'm really happy with this. Me and my team, we're always talking Ted Lasso. Um, uh, but I could also say, oops, I spelled that wrong. Of course I did. Something like a demo environment. Maybe I'm liking where this is going. I could tell it to shorten certain parts or maybe expand. Like, or really like that, but talk more about what that link says is going to be detailed in that webinar. So I just asked it to shorten it, and it did. I could also, which this is another great thing to demo since we're talking drafting support. Okay, this is great. I love this. Let's say, no notes. This is ready to send out. I'm going to put this in my Outlook, and this is ready to send to my team. But we do kind of want to let the whole rest of the company know, and they're maybe not in the inner circle, right? They don't have, they might not get the Ted Lasso references. So I could say, please create an alternate version of this, at least an eighth grade reading level, keep it 508 aligned and compliant, and we're going to send this out to the rest of the staff. So pretty cool, right? You can see how in minutes where maybe I finally got this out to my team, and I'm going to maybe take another hour or several, perhaps, to draft another version of this for the rest of the company. You can have AI help you, right? Can be a real time saver there. Um, All right, so let's see another demo. I also wanted to show you, well, and let me actually show you a couple of things. One of the things we talk about in class, by the way, this is just good generative AI hygiene in any one of the tools that you may be using, Copilot or any. I'm going to start a new chat because I'm going to change my context. I want to talk about something different. So in this case, I am going to have it. You mentioned, a lot of us can be tied up heavily in meetings, and there's documents, and people maybe need to send a summary with action items and those sorts of things. So I have pre-typed this prompt again, so you don't have to watch me type and possibly misspell a bunch of stuff again. And I'm going to upload some sample meeting notes. And our friends, actually, you know what? Let me pull this up, and so you can see what the original looks like too. While this is thinking, let me get that up here. So I had just, I don't know if you're like me and put a lot of things in just a note or whatever, but so this is a fictitious meeting from earlier this week where Ted, Rebecca, Keely, Beard, and Roy we're all in a meeting together, and just is written in very like Brian speak, as I often say. I don't know. Are we even done with module 3? What's going on? So this is, very accessible notes here, I think. So I uploaded that, and again, in the time it took me to talk about it, here's what it is. So it says below is a structured summary based only on the meeting notes, no added or inferred details, which is great because I told it to summarize the notes into key takeaways, action items, and deadlines. I need a separate section for all of those, and I don't want it to make anything up. Don't use the internet. Don't guess. Just use what I gave you. And anyway, let's see what it came up with. Here's key takeaways, just like I asked for. They're wondering about the training modules. Oh, it's been up since 35. Yeah, module three's plain language is ready to rewrite. So here's the key takeaways. Here's the actions. Ted and Rebecca are going to do some things. Keely's got something to do. Roy has some work as well. And it pulled, which I purposely interspersed all throughout those meeting notes, all the different deadlines and actions. But it looks like it did a good job here and was able to pull out all five of those. Here's what's due by next Wednesday, next Friday, next week, and the end of January, and so on, right? Um, so yeah, this is another really great use case if you've got, handwritten notes in an email or something like that, or actually if they had in fact been handwritten, right? You could take a picture of that, upload it, and say, extract the text from this, and give me a summary because I don't want everybody to have to read my horrible handwriting if you're at all like me. And the last of the demos I wanted to show, I will again start a new chat because I'm going to change context again, and I'm going to upload a data set here, and I'm going to say, I'll put my prompt in that I typed so you don't have to watch me do it, and here I go. Let's see, it was this employee data. Yeah, that's the one. So again, this is sometimes also a jaw-dropping moment. Oh my goodness, you can just upload files, right? So there we go. While that's thinking, I'll read it out. Oh, look, see, it's different every time. Now it's given me a choice of responses. So maybe that means it'll take twice the time. I hope not. But anyway, so I can tell it recognized my data. It's showing that up here. I asked it to analyze this data set, identify trends, and summarize the findings in plain language. Don't give me any recommendations involving policy or spending. Just calls them like you sees them, right? And again, interesting behavior. I get this every now and again. It gave me two different responses. Remember how we talked about how the generative AI works and it's always looking for feedback? Well, that's actually kind of nice to see. It's doing that in real time here with our example. So it gave me two responses. Here's an overall snapshot. This could also be interesting. We can see if they disagree with each other. That could be a nice uh, average salary. It tells me a little bit about the employees. Here's the experience and trends. This one said tenure and trends, same thing. Department level patterns, where they all come from. Yep. Workforce composition, other observations. Most employees are assigned a distinct project. So really cool, right? I like to demo something like this, and of course, we'll talk here in a little bit about doing upload when you're uploading and doing these types of things, how to do it safely. But this, I don't know, it's a really good exercise, and we talk about things like this a lot in our classes because if it is something that you can safely upload, really interesting to see what it calls out because again, just like an assistant, like, oh my goodness, fantastic point so and so. Like I didn't even notice that. I was using AI to look at a data set maybe a month ago, a couple weeks ago, or whatever, and I felt like I had it right, but and it was safe to do, so I plugged it in and said, "Hey, so what do you notice about this?" And it was I felt dumb, but it noticed in my data set that, or I said, I think what I asked was, what questions would you have, if you were trying to analyze this or you were trying to check this data for possible bias, or I don't know, just help me think about this in so many words. And it said, well, I wonder if, because there are these trends, but I wonder if it would be, if it's any different for this other currency than what we see mostly here, which is US dollars. And I hadn't even noticed. So thank you, assistant. That's great. I didn't even notice that there were multiple currencies in there, and that opened up a whole nother, box of worms or whatever that turn of phrase is. So, like that was really interesting, right? Can of worms, that's the one. So it was really acting very much like an assistant, right? In doing that. So I'm going to tell it I didn't actually read it. I'm being a little unfair. So this is bad feedback. I'm going to tell it I like that one best. Um, and just for grins, I'm going to follow this up with another prompt and see what we can get. Because something cool that happened this week, the technology is always changing, right? I don't know, I was going to use the word hard. Maybe that's a little aggressive. But it's a lot, right? To stay on top of it and things. Something that happened this week, though. Was, oh, good, it did it already. I asked it to create a chart of the workforce size and structure of the departments to make it a little easier to synthesize where everybody's sitting, and it did it. But yeah, a change that came out this week, I think it was this week that 5.2 came out. Yeah, that was this week. I get my weeks mixed up sometimes. Um, uh, and one of those enhancements was to its images. So, if we were given this webinar, even last week or something, I may have said, well, ChatGPT, it can take a long time, and sometimes the graphics are, sometimes it's okay. But they made a big change just this week, and now, I feel like it rivals, Google's products and some of the others. So anyway, yeah, it was able to do that for us, create a chart of a specific type or a specific subset of this data, and yeah, great, it made that chart for us here. And broke it down for us a little bit. Here's how to read it if I needed any help there. This is what it clarifies for us. This chart is well suited for X, Y, and Z, and it does this, which I love because again, this also sometimes generates really good ideas. Like, I could also make you, a handout or whatever about this, or some quick start guide. I'm like, hey, thanks, assistant. That would be great, actually. Don't, yeah, please. So yeah, so really cool here, right? I'm trying to keep my eye on the chat a little bit, and from what I'm glancing there, I know there's a ton of people in this session here today, but it looks like it's really helping people. So I'm glad to see that. I'm seeing, oh, that's a good idea. I didn't know it could do that. So wonderful to hear that and get feedback like that. Okay, cool. So I'll that's it for my demos there. I am going to talk a little bit too, and I'll offer some useful things, right, as promised. On so how do we think about as we're looking ahead, wrapping up our year here? Obviously, right, we're looking ahead to 2026. Maybe like we saw in the early polls, there was a lot of folks on here who had, less experience or not much experience at all. I know I would like to do something with it. I'm just not necessarily sure where to start. So we'll talk about that and how to do so safely, ethically, and in a compliant way. Um, the Since we're talking about ethical use, if we're thinking ethics, we got to think accuracy. So I want to take a little beat here to talk about prompt engineering and using prompts effectively. Knowing how to craft an effective prompt is a real skill. I've seen some people out there talking like, I guess I agree with it, though I haven't analyzed it in full, I wouldn't say. But like it's one of the most important skills out there right now, right? Because like we saw from some of those earlier graphics, AI is here, right? It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's a massive multi-billion-dollar race to get to the top, right? Lots of money being injected into this, so it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. So learning how to work with it and effectively, it can be can give you the real edge and in anything, with any sort of task. So we have entire classes on this, by the way. So here's just a real quick run through. Usually, when we're talking good prompts, there's a whole bunch of prompt frameworks out there. I follow like some Reddit threads, and I'm in a lot of different AI communities and things. And certainly every week, probably more correct to say every day, somebody's like, hey, Brian here. I work in engineering and specifically with blah, blah, blah. And I've created the new Sims framework that has really helped me get to my results a lot faster. So hey, I just posted in a thread here in Reddit or wherever to tell you a little bit about it. And oh man, that's really good. Oh, did you ever think about doing this other part? Some really good online discussions happening around prompt frameworks. But again, so there's a bunch of them. But they usually include things like this in some order or another. Usually there's some sort of role or act as type of thing. You give it a task or an action to take on. Offering a little bit of context or background data can make all the difference. And you might want to tell it a little bit about the desired output, like you were seeing me do in some of the demos earlier, right? I want you to, stick to the facts. Don't interject any policy or whatever like that. So, an example, and I've used pretty colors to help us differentiate which one is, but like, so act as, say, a federal policy analyst and action summarize. the green there, this, and I give it some context or background when I say this is provided, it's emissions rules for small transportation businesses, which, again, this is going to be better than, hey, look at this document. And it might figure that out, but it might not, right? So offering this extra bit of background data can be quite helpful. And you're asking it to do it, hey, in plain language, don't give legal advice, don't try to interpret this in any way. I don't want any advocacy, just tell me what it says, right? So yeah, lots of great prompts out there. I'm not even going to attempt to list them all. But effective prompt probably does at least something in the neighborhood of these types of things. So there's at least some initial steps you can take, right, to mitigate against the chance of getting an ethically questionable or non-compliant response by being really specific and using prompts intelligently. Um, so when we're talking about being safe, using prompts safely, we should not include PII, PHI, anything that's HR sensitive type information, nothing confidential, nothing proprietary, certainly nothing classified or anything, pre-decision materials. Generally not a good idea. Look, the Ted Lasso characters don't like it at all. This is pretty clear. What would be safer, Ted Lasso approved, using things that are already available to the public. No issues there. I do this second one quite a bit where I'll use mock or maybe analogous data, or like to all the numbers, I'll change their quantity by a factor of whatever, and take out the names and socials and just use an ID identifier, a key that only I hold, right? So that's not something I'm uploading about, you know, uh, anyone to a public model. Um, and then, maybe just getting more general in your scenarios is another tactic I often employ. They don't have to know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it. Just give me ideas for ABC, right? Can be a way to get around, still get the answers that you need without, compromising any security protocols and things. Um, as I mentioned earlier, transparency and human oversight are essential when using these tools, right? Because they're only maybe, only at an assistant level, right? And AI can accelerate our work, but it doesn't replace our importance and the role that we should take in important decision making. So, like as the slide says, and we have whole classes on this too, like AI can be biased, it can be inaccurate. That can happen at the data level, at the training level, at the deployment level, in the feedback level. Like it happens, right? I won't even get into it, right? There's been so many cases of, lawyers or government subcontractors providing reports. Looking at you, Deloitte, who recently have made claims or done things that were later figured out that you used AI for this. This is fictitious. The AI hallucinated. It made up policy. It made up a law. It made up a quote from Brian Sims. Brian didn't say that. And you didn't have the proper human oversight, and this was released, and now there's a little egg on your face. So we obviously have to be very careful there. Talk about this in a lot of our classes too. A good practice is just disclosing your use of AI. But proportional to the importance of your task. I would be lying if I said anything other than, yeah, I mean, I'll often use AI to, I don't know, this is my thoughts, make this sound like an intelligent person, or I can upload an example of an email I put a bunch of thought into and say, what my turns of phrase are like. Can you help me write this email? And then I can edit it, right? Or something like that. If it's not a massive deal, like I show here in this handy little graphic, if it's a low risk task, then maybe those lower risk tasks disclosure isn't as important. But the more critical the decision, as I note here on the slide, the more a human should be involved. So, if it's something critical, certainly, right? If lives are at stake or, people's employment is at stake or their money or whatever, right? Those critical policy level decisions, human needs to be in command. Doesn't mean it's not okay to use AI, but human is fully in the driver's seat at the top of this pyramid. And you can kind of see again, intentionally oversimplified, but a hopefully useful graphic on how you might want to think about this. Human in the loop. If it's high risk, maybe you're just kind of working together and it's looking for things. You're fact checking each other. That's really smart. Maybe you just kind of want to supervise it if it's a little lower risk, and so on down the list. When we're trying to think about, well, so where do I start? What do I do? You might want to think about, tasks that drain the most of your time, but don't really require your expertise as much. That could be a great place to start. Um, for like on a more organizational level, and we talk about this in a couple of our classes, one on governance and one on AI for leaders and management and things. Oh, actually, we have this table that we use in this class, so I'll show it. Where when we talk about this again for more organizational wide decisions, uh, I recommended, and this is in line with a lot of the federal guidance, I think first of mission alignment and second of feasibility. And we do some activities in some of the classes where we plot some different ideas on this matrix. And we're looking for those high highs, right? If it's really mission aligned, this would really be a game changer for us. And I think we can do it. Like we have the tech, and if we could just get these folks talking, like this would, I think it could happen, and this would really, aligns to our mission. That's a good place to start digging further. You can then start thinking about, okay, well, what are the risks, and is that still worth it or not after thorough discussion there? And how would we measure success? Is this going to be easy to demonstrate that it was, adding this AI assistance into our process was the game changer here, or is this something that would have just changed on its own anyway, right? So yeah, so here's a hopefully useful list for you of things to think about. Is it aligned to the mission? Is it feasible? Is it high volume enough, repetitive enough, time consuming enough, and low enough risk? Those are really good criteria, right? So in summary, as some of the federal guidance that's out there agrees with, small, low risk tasks are great pilot candidates. And a lot of the documentation out there from NIST or GAO encourages agencies to pilot, evaluate it, and then scale. Like don't swing for the fence necessarily right away. Can be a good way to get something started and prove some impact early on in your AI adoption. So as we shift a little bit and doing a quick time check here, we're doing great. And we are thinking ahead to 2026. Uh, Here's a couple of quick wins, right? Here's some realistic, I think anyway, low risk actions that a government team could implement fairly immediately. And we have the Ted Lasso believe of approval here. I think this is possible. Um, you could maybe start using it if you're not already to draft things like we looked at, right? It could draft your notes, it could draft memos, draft emails, an FAQ document, right? This could be really good to, just take more time to be better at what humans are better at doing, which is let me focus on the strategy and the big moves of the chess pieces. You take on more of that assistant role, let's say, and so I can focus on the judgment of the thing and not necessarily the wording and the structure so much. So using it for drafting and that changes your focus to editing could be certainly a quick win. Um, uh, Checking for insights. You may, like I talked about an example from my own work that I've shared, like sometimes I'll put up data or a policy, like I feel like I've read the thing, I feel like I understand the thing, but I'll put it up into AI and say, what do you notice about this? And often, actually, it will have found something insightful that I maybe missed, and sometimes it's wrong, so it's worth a check. But I completely missed that part. Let me go back and look at that. Right, that can be a very helpful thing to do. We saw some examples too when I did some demos, right? Of well, mine was more meeting follow up there in the demo, but it could also help with meeting prep, right? Like we're getting these people together. This is what we're here to discuss. Can you help me ideate talking points? or maybe you're the one doing the presentation. I love generative AI for this. You can have it run a simulation where say, hey, just act as the other people in the room. Here's the slide deck I'm going to use. Give me some questions, right? Challenge me. Like let's do a dry run of this big important meeting or whatever, and I'll see what questions you throw at me, and then at the end of it, I might ask you to evaluate, what you thought of my responses, which you can do with by clicking the little microphone and just speaking, or through text. That's a little more fancy up there maybe, but it can be very helpful, right? You could also use it to summarize notes, like we saw in our example there, right? You could have it organize your complex work. Hey, this is a really big task. It's a really big project taking up. We talked about this in some of the project management classes. Like there's a lot here, right? So maybe that's a good use of AI there to help me break this down into more actionable steps because this is just. I need to take a walk, right? I can't even figure out how I would maybe want to attack this. And AI can be a good assistant in that scenario, or maybe like I'm there's a risk on the project, or I'm wondering about X, Y, and Z. Can you help me, AI, think of pros and cons about these different scenarios, or create three alternatives to this sort of situation, right? And I've had it do this too, though I think more so with data than in the project management space. But you could say, here's a scenario, play this out 1,000 times, and what trend do you see, right? And who knows what that might intellectually shake loose for us, right? And certainly with accessibility, like we saw again in the demo, this can make, I'm thinking, broad accessibility, but also like 508 type accessibility. Here's the document. Can you make another version of this for this different audience? Normally we would not have been able to release, say, a transcription of this webinar, but now that we have, AI tools, we can, we'll be able to transcribe that and make this accessible to a whole different part of the community, right? So yeah, lots of things there. Like, and I'm again kind of keeping my eye on the chat a little bit, and I'm seeing a lot of thumbs ups and oh my goodness, and like I hope this has the juices flowing, and it seems like it does. So that's great to see. Um, a little bit here too on building AI readiness. So we're coming to the end of our hour, and I'll start summarizing. Like I mentioned, I think starting with small pilots is certainly in line with the guidance that's out there. Thank you, Amanda, by the way, for reminding folks about the PowerPoint and the recording and things. That's fantastic. Thanks for doing that. But yeah, so starting with those small pilots is a great place to start. Here's a little graphic that we use in one of our courses that breaks that down a little bit more. Another way to possibly kind of think about it, think of the structure of your pilot, identify just a couple of workflows. Again, it's okay to start small. And then how would we measure that? And then are people ready for it? Do they have the training they need? Have we identified maybe some champions who can help get this off the ground? Because I know we're starting from zero. And then, hey, look at that. If it's working, when it's working, then we can scale. Then we'll come up with our policy about it, and all the other things that go into proper AI governance, which by the way we also have whole classes on. So I think that's a great kind of multi-phased suggestions there. It's really important. We talk about this a lot in class, where well, because it's a project management practice anyway. But with AI and with these small projects, it's great to share the lessons learned, right? Because okay, maybe we tried this thing and that didn't go so great, but that doesn't mean it's over, right? Like somebody else in a new context, in a new day with a new group of people, may have different success. And again, sharing those lessons learned in between teams, just like a project team, can maybe make all the difference in the success of the next one, right? There are a few AI forums and groups. MIT has a policy forum. GovLoop has an AI specific community. GSA has its AI community practice. I think that's the one that's most well known. ACT IAC has a lot of events. So just get involved, right? And I mentioned Reddit even, right? There's lots of federal threads or government related threads, certainly a lot of AI related threads, even some specific to prompt engineering, like I mentioned. So it's worth some exploration. Get involved if you can. And always a good idea. Again, as Amanda mentioned in my introduction, I've been in education my entire career, so I'll check my own bias here when I say this last one. But um, uh, grow the AI literacy in your team, right? Which you can do through training. The more we all know it, the more we all understand it, the more comfortable we are all with it, the less intimidating it seems, and the more, the higher the chance of project success if we're all simpatico, right? And communicating and we're all kind of on the same page, right? So those are hopefully some helpful tips there. So here's my last slide. I will, looks like we probably have a couple of minutes here for questions. Yes, sorry, somebody, yeah, well, you know what? Perfect. I'll answer that question here in just a moment. But yeah, so to kind of wrap up, in case I know some folks may want to go, and thank you again for spending your lunch hour with us. But I would encourage everybody, choose at least one new task to try with AI. Just give it a shot. Practice with prompting. We say this. This is what, by the way, brought the Ted Lasso connection into this. I loved in that show how he was always talking about being curious, right? I think that's so applicable here to the AI space. Like, just try it, give it a shot. Like, what's it going to do? Judge you? Like it's fine, right? So practice, experiment with your generative AI, but of course, do it safely. We did create this little custom URL here to make it easier to find. You know what? Let me try to drop this in the chat. Ah, and there's our guy, right? Ted Lasso. He believes in you too. He says, smells like potential. But yeah, graduateschool.edu/AI. We'll take you to, all of our offerings if you'd like to learn a little bit more about any of this or a lot more about any of this. As Amanda mentioned, I had a hand in writing most of the courses and teach a lot of them too. So may even see some of you in there. So let me stop sharing my screen here and I will take a look at some of these questions. Okay, oh yes, okay, so perfect. Some folks were, and if you need to go, of course, I know we're really close to the top of the hour, so obviously feel free to do so. Let me get all of this stuff back under me here. So yeah, I see there was a question about are we limited by a certain number of prompts? In if that question is about the class, maybe. It depends. The number of prompts that you have access to depends on your level, or like if you're on the free plan or if you're using a team plan. Um, but luckily, I think we do enough in the class. I try to demo more than we do activities because usually, yeah, you only have a couple of prompts for your day or whatever. So one tactic is like, hey, try this if you're on a team plan. Otherwise, let me just show you. I'll demo it. Another little way around that, by the way, that I use actually with a lot of systems is it's free to make accounts on lots of different systems. So I've absolutely done that in a class environment where we've maxed out Gemini and like, okay, well, that's it. We're going over to Perplexity now, right? Or going back to ChatGPT because that's where I have a team license. So everybody is able to participate. I saw several folks ask about the different forums. I mentioned GSA's AI Community of Practice. I mentioned ACT IAC. They have a lot of in-person events, and they've been doing a lot with AI here recently. GovLoop has some AI events as well, and MIT has a policy forum that I kind of keep my fingers on the pulse of that. I see a few people asked um, if there was AI preferences over another, like which tool was better for what. And I'm gonna give you the best and the worst answer to that, which is it depends. Again, like it's hard, right? Because the everything is changing so fast. Like I would have said just a week ago, right? I would use Nano Banana from Google for AI images, for example. But this week, that's all changed, right? Um, so that's that's tough, right? The technology is changing literally every day, certainly every week. But really, generally speaking, I don't want to, I'll try to be better than that terrible answer. ChatGPT is really good for general tasks, as is Grok. Actually, I really like the way Grok responds to me. I feel like I have to, in the past, I've had to give Grok a little bit less nudging to get at an answer than ChatGPT. Unpopular opinion, maybe, I don't know. And Perplexity is really good because it's a little bit more academic. So depending on what you're doing, Perplexity might be quite good. It's also they've done more, I think, with Perplexity to plug into like the market live. So if something you're doing is like I need real-time updates with XYZ, Perplexity could be a really good choice. And Gemini is really good for also for everyday tasks. And again, a week ago I would have said, but it's better for image generation. Not so true this week. And Copilot is fantastic. I love having Copilot because that's firmly in the category of productivity tools for generative AI. Because like that's awesome. It's right in your Excel. You don't even have to leave the window. Same with Outlook and Word and PowerPoint and all those things. So like you can't get that from, Grok or whatever. So I think they each have, their different benefits. But I do see we're at time, and there were so many great questions in here, and we had so many awesome people attending with us. But thank you very much. I'm so glad you could spend a little bit of time with us today. Have a great, much needed, restful break if you have one in your future. And I thank you very much. Hope to see you in class. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys. And just a friendly reminder too, if you didn't see in the chat or if you had missed Brian's comment or my comment earlier, we will be providing the recording soon here. So just keep an eye on your email where we will provide that as well. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you again for joining us today. Have a great holiday. Have a great
everybody.
Friday.
Yeah, weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.